many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
And welcome to Anti-Tyranny News Radio here on UCY.tv. Thank you for joining me this evening. It is Wednesday the 15th. All this Ebola news is really starting to aggravate me because I can see what's happening, whether it be intentional or not. For me, it really does seem like it would be intentional. Here's one, let it pop up here. This one out of a CBS local station. Again, once it loads. CBS DFW. CDC, Ebola patient traveled by air with low-grade fever. This is a second Ebola patient here. Give me a second. I want to make sure this is a video. Go to blare in my ear. Says here, the CDC has announced that the second healthcare worker diagnosed with Ebola, now identified as Amber Joy Benson of Dallas, traveled by air October 13th with a low-grade fever a day before she showed up at the hospital reporting the symptoms. The CDC is now reaching out to all passengers who flew on Frontier Airlines Flight 1143 Cleveland to Dallas, Fort Worth. The flight landed at 8:16 p.m. Central. All 132 passengers on the flight are being asked to call 1-800-CDC-INFO. Public health professionals will begin interviewing passengers about the flight Wednesday afternoon. And of course, something's going to play here. Commercial or something. Okay. Scroll a little too far there. Although Vincent did not report any symptoms and she did not meet the fever threshold of 100.4, she did report at the time she took her temperature and found it to be 99.5, said CDC Director Tom Frieden. Her temperature, coupled with the fact that she had been exposed to the virus, should have prevented her from getting on the plane, he said. I don't think that changes the level of risk of people around her. She did not vomit. She was not bleeding. So the level of risk of people around her would be extremely low. Now we see that they keep telling us, oh, the exposure is extremely low, and people keep getting infected. People that have had gear on to, you know, deal with this, to be in close contact with these people, have come down with it. Um, I think that this is being allowed to happen because no one in their right mind would say, well, we'll just let it get a little bit bigger before we act. No. There could be something else behind this, and it seems that precautions aren't being taken by officials that are said to be there to protect us. At least that's what they want you to believe. And at the same time, this stuff is spreading. You know, Obama had recently, before this all really came down, passed an executive order and basically saying anybody, even with any signs of any respiratory issues, could be detained. You had all these kids coming down with this respiratory illness. And then you had this Ebola come to light. Out of Zero Hedge, they have the public health emergency declaration right here for Connecticut. And highlighted in it says here, I authorize the Commissioner of Public Health to order the isolation and quarantine under conditions prescribed by the Commissioner of Public Health. So let me read that little portion again. I authorize the Commissioner of Public Health to order the isolation or quarantine under the conditions prescribed by the Commissioner of Public Health of any individual or group of individuals whom the Commissioner reasonably believes to have been exposed to, infected with, or otherwise at risk of passing the Ebola virus. I am filing this declaration with you under my hand and seal on the 7th day of October 2014, and it's signed here by the Governor, Malloy, 10:04 a.m. And it just seems that end games seem to be playing out in this scenario, which here in America, it might not be that big yet, but it seems to be allowing to persist. It seems like the government is going, yeah, we care, and not doing anything, allowing it to continue to spread. I have a clip here from Alex Jones' channel with David Knight. NDAA on steroids, Ebola death camps. And I would be cautious to go, this is happening, this is going to happen, even though, you know, Joel Skousen's even come out saying that it's imminent. But I would say that I would err on a side of caution, because we don't want to ramp up with fear over it, but we also have to be aware that this could happen. This is a potential. This could be one of those nightmares played out. So I'm going to play this clip here.
Fox News celebrities are floating a trial balloon for FEMA camps that they've now rebranded as Ebola camps. Here's what they propose.
I think they should set up special centers for just Ebola in each state. They shouldn't be letting people go into regular hospitals where it could be spread.
Right.
For this specific disease, we should have a special facility with specially trained people who know exactly how to deal with this in each city. That way it's not spread, and when the person walks in, they know what they're looking for. They know if they find it, they know how to contain it.
He probably doesn't want to do it, but Rudy Giuliani would be perfect for this particular role.
Why not put in Fox contributor Oliver North? He's the guy that originally gave us the blueprint for martial law and FEMA camps back in 1984 when he wrote Rex 84. Have you seen anyone on Fox News or any mainstream media suggest that there should be an independent review and hearing for people that they want to quarantine into these camps to ensure that it's legitimate, that it's not being abused? No, you haven't heard anybody say that. As a matter of fact, we've just seen Obama in July give himself by executive fiat the power to apprehend and detain anyone that they believe has the potential to become sick. This is the NDAA, indefinite detention by the military on steroids. And then, of course, there's the health issues. How do we keep people who may be misdiagnosed for Ebola, who may simply have a fever or flu, from being locked up with people who do have Ebola, contracting it, spreading it? The idea that this actress puts out there that people would voluntarily go to these places, that they would accurately self-diagnose themselves as having Ebola, no one is going to voluntarily go to what will become death camps. Our government declares no-fly zones at the drop of a hat. They isolate entire countries using no-fly zones, using embargoes, and they do it for political and economic reasons. But they won't isolate these countries with a pandemic that at the current unabated rate of growth will expand to 5 to 15% of the population. Quite frankly, our government wants this to get out of hand. They could do something about it. Let's look at a third world country and what they had the will and the ability to do. This is the area right now where this is going on the hottest. Of course, Guinea is where it started. Sierra Leone and Liberia, it is still growing exponentially. Now, bordering Liberia, where it is the worst, is the Ivory Coast. They typically have migrant workers cross this border during chocolate season. They're going to shut down that crop, that harvest, by blocking this from migrant workers. They have the ability and the will to close their open borders. They will take the economic hit, but our government won't because they put economics above the population's health. Now, there's another lesson to be had from this. We can look at the story of two countries here, Liberia and Nigeria. Now, in the one case, in Nigeria, this is not contiguous with the countries that are currently having the outbreak. They're way over here. Nigeria is over here, but that was brought in airborne on an airplane. One man lied his way into Nigeria. He was very sick by the time he got off the plane. His symptoms manifested while he was in travel. That's something for us to remember because when people are traveling from this area to Western countries, they have journeys that take anywhere to go to the United States. It takes up to 33 hours and multiple stops. He got sick on his journey, got out, was very sick. That created a small epidemic. He gave it to 20 other people, 8 of whom subsequently died, but they contained that single case. So much like the United States, Nigeria has Ebola introduced to it by a single person traveling by air. How did they contain it? Well, they used rapid contact tracing. They looked at primary, secondary, and tertiary contacts. They isolated and watched those people. That turned out to be 898 people. Have you seen that kind of work done by the CDC in America? I haven't. Contrast that to Liberia. Right now in Liberia, there have been 4,076 people who have contracted Ebola. So far, there's been 2,300 deaths. Many people are still sick. Their casualty rate is 70%. What did they do differently? Well, they had open borders. They had politicians telling them not to worry. It's not as serious as it appears. And they have actually censored the news media, threatening reporters, threatening healthcare workers to not talk about this, threatening to arrest people. They've also suspended elections this week. Which country do we look like? Is it more like Nigeria or is it more like Liberia? And once we get to a pandemic like they've got in Liberia, of course, Fox News is presenting the FEMA camps. We'll call them Ebola camps. For InfoWars Nightly News, I'm David Knight.
Okay. Well, the one thing he, pointed out, same thing I was pointing out, we don't seem to see a will to try to prevent this from spreading. Special interests are being put above the public interest. Typical for politicians to do this. Should not be really a surprise. I think some of it's being hyped, but I think of some of it's being hyped for reasons. We seen the hyping of the H1N1, and we see what really came of that. This whole Ebola could be a hyping, but it also could be a real threat too. And we know that they really don't care the means if they can accomplish their goals. And when I say them, people that are profiting off of your labor and your life. This is what politicians are now. They are leeches that are literally putting themselves in positions and claiming power over you and gaining billions of dollars off of the world. And you really get this division between the elitists and the rest of the population. And the elitists of all countries, definitely the ones that are allied together, you tend to see that there's other people behind the scenes that tend to pop up with all these countries. Special interest, central banking, and you can even look at, how the United Nations are. But it really comes down to they like to use any crisis to their advantage to seek more control over the populace, to continue their growth of wealth and power over others. They do not want to let that go. They have no interest on letting that go. And when you really see that they are the few and we are the many, you see how much actual control they have over people. You say it's all in the mind. Well, it's not all in the mind because it's playing out in reality. It's playing out in the physical form where people are subservient to others. And I think that's the one cause that has allowed us to get this far from freedom. It is just we've lived in a fallacy for too long. And it's hard to break people out. It's like, the Matrix, breaking people out of the it's not something easy to do. And when it's gone on for generations, and this is something that's kind of bred into the populace, that it really takes a hold and allows the system to continue. I think what we are now seeing, though, because of the internet, because of technology, we see people finding little slithers of freedom that allows them to be imaginative and, be able to create things, be able to expand their knowledge and seek out different ideologies and really start expanding their mind to the point that they do think for themselves, because no longer are they really only knowing to maybe a couple ideologies. They have everything right there at the tip of their fingers. And even when government tries to block that, tries to prevent that, there's ways around it. Viewing things by proxy. There's something that was posted, I think it was on Behind the Curtain on Facebook, from Wired.com, and I had seen something like this before, and I posted a link to the one I've seen before, but it says here, from Wired.com. With this tiny box, you can anonymize everything you do online. Says here, no tool in existence protects your anonymity on the web better than the software Tor, which encrypts internet traffic and bounces it through random computers around the world. But for guarding anything other than web browsing, Tor has required a mixture of finicky technical setup and software tweaks. Now routing all your traffic through Tor may be as simple as putting a portable hardware condom on your Ethernet cable. Today, a group of privacy-focused developers plans to launch a Kickstarter campaign for Anabox. The $45 open-source router automatically directs all data that connects to it by Ethernet or Wi-Fi through the Tor network, hiding the user's IP address and skirting censorship. It's also small enough to hide in a pack of cigarettes. Anabox's tiny size means users can carry the device with them anywhere, plugging it into an office Ethernet cable to do sensitive work, or in cyber cafe in China to evade the Great Firewall. The result, if Anabox fulfills its security promises, is that it could become significantly easier to anonymize all your traffic with Tor, not just web browsing, but email, instant messaging, file sharing, and all the other miscellaneous digital exhausts that your computer leaves behind online. Now, what I've seen for this, it's from adafruit.com, adafruit.com. It's called the Onion PI Pack with large antenna make a Raspberry Pi Tor proxy. And it says here in the description, want something more compact? Feel like someone is snooping on you? Browse anonymously anywhere you go with the Onion PI Tor proxy. Using this pack of parts and a free weekend, you can build a project that uses a Raspberry Pi, a USB Wi-Fi adapter, and Ethernet cable to create a small, low power and portable privacy PI. After it's built, using it is easy as pie. First, plug the Ethernet cable in an internet provider in your home, work, hotel, or conference event. Next, power up the PI with the micro USB cable to your laptop or to the wall adapter. The PI will boot up and create a new secure wireless access point called Onion PI. Connecting to the access point will automatically route any web browsing from your computer through the anonymizing Tor network. This pack comes with everything you need, $108 of parts for $95. We donate a portion of the sales to the EFF and Tor. Each order comes with the Raspberry Pi Model B, Adafruit Pi case, Wi-Fi adapter with antenna, 10-foot Ethernet cable, micro USB cable, 5-volt, 1-amp power adapter, USB console cable, 4-gigabyte SD card with Wheezy. So, there's ways out there to really block or unblock, block snoopers and unblock blocked websites. And whenever more tyranny is, tried upon us, there's people out there that are creating ways to get around it, which, things like startpage.com do a good job of that. Using proxies to view websites that are blocked in your country, which I've actually came across websites that were blocked. And it amazed me because they were UK websites, but they were blocked in the US. Just kind of surprised me. But we need things like that to be able to spread the message of freedom, of liberty, to seek out the truth, to get other opinions on things, and really be able to free ourselves from a system that is constantly trying to clamp down on us. I've seen some interesting from benswan.com. Oath upheld. This is kind of surprising to me. I really think so. Nashville cops refuse Secret Service request for illegal search of Obama critic. I'm going to play this here.
means they're lying to you. It means they're lying to us. They're lying to me. And again, this disease does not appear to be one of the old strains. Doesn't appear to be Zaire, because we now have two nurses that knew they were around the virus, taking extreme precaution, wearing fancy hazmat suits that were aware they were treating this deadly, virulent disease, that have now mysteriously come down with the virus. Again, put two and two together, that doesn't make sense at all. I mean, hey, if a hazmat suit doesn't work, then why wear one at all? Now, if these nurses are contracting the disease wearing full protective gear, imagine how many people have also contracted the disease prior to Thomas Eric Duncan even arriving at the hospital. They had quarantined over 100, but you can only imagine there's potentially hundreds, if not thousands, if not tens of thousands, if not soon to be millions, maybe tens of millions of Americans who have already contracted the disease. And again, I believe it's a bioweapon, folks. Why would the United States continue to keep our borders open? Why would they not stop incoming flights from the affected Ebola hot zone? Why would the president simply just check a temperature as these people are entering the United States? Remember, Thomas Eric Duncan wasn't showing a temperature when he came to the U.S. He was fine. He was still in the incubation period. And again, I'll ask the question, how many more Thomas Eric Duncans are there that we don't know about? Again, there's been very many historical examples throughout history where the U.S. government has specifically knowingly infected patients with a virulent and or deadly disease. One such case was the Tuskegee example that I cited in my documentary, where the U.S. Public Health Service actually knowingly infected patients with the syphilis virus and told them they were actually receiving free health care, but when in reality, they were knowingly infecting these patients with the disease. 201 of them, of the, I believe, 500 or 700 they had under study at the time, going over a 40-year period, they actually infected them to study the natural progression of the disease, targeted specifically rural African-American black men. Kind of like what's happening now in sub-Saharan Africa. You know, it's not me, it's declassified reports like the memorandum that I showed in the documentary, where Henry Kissinger, famous for quoting that depopulation is in the best interest of the American people. These declassified documents with, on the header, attention to the president and the Department of Defense, people like the Secretary of State, etc., talking about unmitigated population growth in this part of the world where the Ebola virus just happens to be situated, is an extreme national security risk to the United States federal government. You see, the U.S. federal government has a self-interest in this disease. Not only do they have a self-interest in controlling the potentially unmitigated population growth in these third world countries, of course, natural resources, there's ore, there's all kinds of things that we want in this part of the world, but they also happen to own, the CDC, a government agency, own the patent to the deadly Ebola virus and 70% of its mutated, potentially mutated strains. Again, this virus, and let me preference, I'm not a scientist, but this virus isn't following the natural progression or course of the Zaire strain. It looks and appears to be something completely different. Again, the second nurse here over the weekend contracting the disease wearing a full hazmat suit. Again, if the hazmat suits don't work, then why even wear a hazmat suit? The head of the CDC, Tom Frieden, calling this the worst outbreak since AIDS. And the President of the United States, in the meantime, calling it an unlikely event several months ago. People like me here at AMTV and some others out in the blogosphere telling you that you should be extremely worried. That if they're telling you not to panic, you should panic. That by keeping our borders open, the disease will spread here to the United States of America. And it's exactly what's happened. Again, this isn't rocket science. Even if the federal government had their best intentions, they're going to screw it up. People are going to continue to flood over our border and infect innocent Americans, unknowingly or not. But the actions by the president, by the administration, a report I read this morning blaming the GOP on the outbreak, just shows how politicized this event actually is. Again, Obama's unlikely event is now as likely and as real and fatal as the deadly Ebola virus itself, with a very high kill rate. And again, I'll ask the question, how is this not manslaughter? You know, if you were to drink a six-pack and then shoot a bunch of Jack Daniels and mistakenly go kill a family of 4, driving illegally while drunk, you would be prosecuted under the full extent of the law, if not receive the death penalty for that action. Yet the president does the same things on behalf of thousands, tens of thousands, maybe millions of Americans that are now not only exposed to the deadly virus, but will assuredly die. Again, this thing has a 50 to 75% kill rate, folks, an incubation period anywhere between 2 to 21 days. Again, personally, I think that this is a bioweapon. And remember, it's not me that always fearmongers around this. It's your government that has been fearmongering about terrorism and bioweapons for several decades now. With the passage of the Patriot Act, the September 2001 terror attack cover-up, the Boston bombings, it's your government that constantly fearmongers you into submission, saying that bioterror is a very significant threat, that EMPs are a very significant threat to the national security of the United States. Yet we have a virus, a deadly virus spreading now that is uncharacteristically showing and not matching, in my opinion, to previous strains, the most well-known strains like the Zaire form, with nurses wearing full-blown hazmat suits coming down with the deadly disease and virus when they know that they're operating around such a sinister disease. Again, none of it adds up. None of it makes sense unless there's intention behind it. Again, there's either gross intention to murder innocents, to infect knowingly Americans here in the United States, just like the Tuskegee experiment, the famous experiment that ran for 40 years, where the U.S. Public Health Service and the federal government knowingly infected African-American men with syphilis to study it. Fact. Not hearsay. Not a conspiracy. It's either that, it's either malicious intent, again, to control the unmitigated population growth in that part of the world, sub-Saharan African nations in West Africa, African-American men, women, and children, or it's gross incompetence. And either way, it's manslaughter, it's death, it's chaos. And it's all being brought to you by the President of the United States, our government officials, both at the right and the left of Washington, D.C. today. Again, folks, I believe this to be a bioweapon. Get it out everywhere. Make it viral. Hard-hitting in your face. Watch
AMTV. Now, he pointed something out that, you know, we are continued to be called, you know, fearmongers, along with, you know, conspiracy theorists and whatnot, but fearmongers. But like he pointed out, really, is it not the government that's the fearmongers? Are they not the ones that incite the fear by allowing the spread of this unmitigated, really? They're like, we'll worry once you have it. And by then you've already spread it. And in the handling of it, it's getting spread some more. And you have to really just come to the conclusion that they're not looking out for your best interests. They really are looking at ways to use this to their advantage. Okay. I'm going to try to find something here. I had an article here, looking through all of this and not seeing it. I was hoping just to go back in my history. Doesn't look like that's gonna work. Pretty sure it was there. Apparently not. Let me see if I can find the article again. Found it through Facebook. Probably long gone by now. this works. Usually close out Facebook. I don't know if any of you have been having the same problem, but if Facebook's running, all of a sudden your internet kind of just goes complete crap. Which I just had Skype pop up and show me red bars, and luckily I didn't lose it. Okay, let's see if I can find it here. Okay, I found it here. Now, I don't know if any of you have noticed, but Vice News has really been going really against the libertarian movement. And when you see that, well, Murdoch and Soros tend to have their damn money behind Vice, you might see why. I don't know if how many of you are aware, but we just had the New York City Liberty Fest that went on. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it out there, which I was planning on it, but did not turn out to happen. Vice puts out this article, which I'm going to read it and really kind of point out some things. This Saturday, Derek Rose, I think this is the beginning, yeah. It said, the title of the article is "Libertarians Are Done with Politics," which a lot of people are. A lot of libertarians have shied away from politics, and I've talked about this on the broadcast before. But it says here, this Saturday, Derek Rose, a dreadlocked anarchist from Texas, was sitting alone reading in the VIP room of New York City's Liberty Fest while preparing to give a speech on how to dismantle the government. As the room filled with what Rose referred to as libertarians, he sat absorbed in his book, The Art of Not Being Governed, an anarchist history of upland Southeast Asia. Among the anarcho-libertarians who turn out for this annual convention for the various sects of the freedom-loving fringe, Rose's resume is impressive and includes such items as selling non-GMO seeds and hosting an anarchist talk show. Earlier this month, he was arrested outside Houston City Council for disorderly conduct and abusive language during a demonstration against water fluoridation. He's what he calls an agorist, or an anarchist-leaning libertarian, which, according to the New Libertarian Manifesto, means he's more focused on direct action than politics. Since Ron Paul's 2012 presidential campaign fizzled out, and arguably before then, libertarians like Rose have grown increasingly skeptical of the political process, already wary of government involvement in economic and social matters. Libertarians have lately been asking themselves whether libertarian politician is a contradiction in terms. The reason we have this love and worship of government is that there are a lot of us running around with mommy and daddy issues we haven't dealt with. Until we do, we are going to keep crying out for someone else to take care of us, for someone else to do the tough work for us, said Rose, who advocates for what he calls do-it-yourself governance, which means he supports community farms, Bitcoin commerce, and radical communes. And you notice how they slipped radical communes in there. Rose argues that the libertarian difference to the political system has gotten in the way of the movement's ability to achieve its goals. Some of you are still fighting in the political arena, he said, but the point is to be living example of whatever truth it is you believe in. Other Liberty Fest attendees seem to be in agreement. emphasizing that libertarian politicians and the cult that surrounds the most popular ones are contrary to the ideals of the movement, maximizing autonomy, do-it-yourself governance, and minimizing federal power over individuals. Why wait for your representative to legalize weed when you can smoke it in your RV? Why use tax currency when you can buy plane tickets to Gulch with bitcoins? I was a big Ron Paul supporter in 2012, said Markel Fontaine, a gay anarcho-capitalist who has become something of a celebrity in the libertarian blogosphere. Then I went to 2012 Libertarian Party presidential candidate and former New Mexico Governor Gary Johnson, and then I became full-on ANCAP. If Johnson does run in 2016, I wish him good luck. I don't believe in the voting process anymore or federal elections. Despite this dissatisfaction with politics, libertarian politicians haven't given up on the democratic process as a solution to government interference and overreach. In fact, Johnson, the keynote speaker at Liberty Fest, has been preparing a high-profile lawsuit against the Commission on Presidential Debates to open up the debates to third-party candidates now out of office and working as a CEO of a marijuana company. Johnson is reportedly planning to run for president again in 2016. Although he's loved by libertarians for his Putinesque demonstrations of grit, including scaling Everest and paragliding in hot gas balloons, he might not be able to lure the movement back to the polls in 2016. He got 1% of the vote in 2012, which was one of the Libertarian Party's best showings. In a speech to attendees Saturday, he did attempt to address the apparent contradictions between his libertarian ideas and the pursuit of higher office, emphasizing his background as an entrepreneur and his hands-off approach to governance in New Mexico. I said I was going to bring common sense business approach to government, Johnson said. Issue first, politics last. The private sector created jobs, he said, noting that he vetoed more legislation during his 2 terms as governor than the other 49 governors combined. But I did create an environment where I thought the playing field was more level. Earlier in the day, disgraced former Queens City Councilman Dan Halloran took the stage as Liberty Fest surprise guest, giving his first speech since July when the Republican was found guilty of federal corruption charges for facilitating tens of thousands of dollars in campaign bribes. And in an ironic turn, Halloran blamed the federal government for his breach of conduct, defending his decision to facilitate a payoff scheme to a Democratic state senator of the New York mayoral ballot as a Republican. I did it for a black Democrat who was going to run on the Republican line, he said. That's a threat to the establishment, a threat to the party bosses. That's a threat to the political system that wants everyone to be held to the system. It would have been an independent voice. It would have been a choice. Halloran won't be running for office anytime soon, mostly because he's a convicted felon, but when I asked if he would ever live off the grid in true libertarian fashion, Halloran demurred. I think that's more the anarchist component of the libertarian movement, he said. Like Ron Paul, or Kentucky Senator and presumptive 2016 presidential candidate Rand Paul, I think we can still do things to fix the republic. But for now, at least, most attendees at Liberty Fest seem more inclined to hide out on communes. Now, this is the part that really leaves the article and is trying to leave people that read this article leaning against the libertarian movement, the anarchist libertarian movement. It says, but for now, at least, most attendees at Liberty Fest seem more inclined to hide out on communes and dream up secessionist plots than knock on doors for candidates like Johnson or Rand Paul. Ian Kyofi, the organizer of Liberty Fest, was skeptical of the younger Paul's appeal among attendees. I think Rand learned from his father that if you want to further the libertarian political agenda, you're going to have to make concessions along the way, he said. the purists of the Ron Paul crowd do not accept this. That's because we don't want someone that's going to be manipulative to get to where they are. Of course, if they have to lie and manipulate to get where they are, how do we know if they're lying and manipulating us to get where they are? More libertarian purists understand, we don't want the liars and thieves. That's what we're trying to get rid of. So to fall into the same thing that has led us to where we're at is not a solution. It'll end up leaving us right where we are. So, yep, there's a little hit piece from Vice. Let me see, Vice just shits for brains. Okay, give me a second here. Pull up this other article. Maybe. I guess I can't find it here. Huh. That one disappeared too. Okay, well, I guess I'll just do this next thing I was going to play here. And this is, a lot of you know Josie the Outlaw, Josie I.E., Josie, the Outlaw. Moved to Keene, New Hampshire, josietheoutlaw.com. She put out a video about her on being an outlaw, joining the Free State type movement up there, and activists up there in Keene, New Hampshire. Really being a outspoken woman in the movement. So I'm going to go ahead and play this clip from her.
No. Being an outlaw does not necessarily mean being the bad guy. Whenever rights are being violated in the name of law and authority, then it's the duty of every decent moral person to oppose that. First with their words, and then with actions if necessary. Do I respect the law? Not really, if by the law you mean whatever the politicians tell us to do. I respect life and liberty, the right of every individual to be left alone as long as they're not hurting anyone. When the law goes against that, which it does all the time, then it doesn't deserve our respect or our obedience. Am I saying that sometimes it's good to break the law? Yeah, absolutely. When you look back through history, most major injustices have been carried out in the name of law. And most of human progress has been the result of those people who dared to stand up and resist those who claim the right to rule. The difference between a bad outlaw and a good outlaw is the difference between violent aggression and defensive force. Robbery, threats, assault, and murder are wrong because those things violate the rights of others, not because of a rule written on a piece of paper. And when those in power write laws saying that they're allowed to rob, threaten, assault, murder, that's not okay. And that's when you need good outlaws to make things right. Yes, I am anti-government, because government is always the enemy of freedom and justice. Political power is never about getting along or peacefully coexisting. It's about people trying to use the machine called the government to rob and control others. However good your intentions are, if you still imagine that a ruling class can be a good thing, if you still think that the world would be great if only the right person were in charge and calling the shots, you seriously need to rethink things. Am I being extreme? If you want to say that I'm extreme in my support of freedom and my opposition to authoritarian domination, I take that as a compliment. I'm all for cooperation and compromise on a lot of things, but never on principles. I'd have to be a coward to condone a certain level of injustice just so I don't get called extreme. Am I a tolerant person? I'm completely tolerant of all sorts of viewpoints, belief systems, and lifestyles, whether I personally approve of them or not. But when it comes to anyone committing aggression against another, no, I'm not tolerant of that at all. No one should be. And if you're still voting for people who promise to use the power of government to tax and control whoever you don't like, don't pretend to be tolerant. People need to understand, as long as you think that your ideas should be forced on others and others think their ideas should be forced on you, political con men will always use that to empower themselves, while pitting the rest of us against each other, based on race, religion, income level, lifestyles, nationality, basically any difference they can find. Until you stop falling for the politicians' divide and conquer tactics, until you're willing to allow everyone else to be truly free, whether you like them or approve of their choices or not, then don't expect to be free yourself. Now, I'm not looking for a fight. My goal is peaceful coexistence, but those who seek political power do not share that goal, and they have no intention of leaving us alone. They're all about telling you what you must do, what you can't do, how much money you have to give them, and then setting their thugs after you if you disobey. That's what government does, and it's the opposite of getting along. Yes, what I advocate is far outside of the mainstream. If you want a fundamental change in the world, you have to start with a fundamental change inside your own head. People keep believing and doing the same things and wonder why nothing changes. They keep voting for people who promise to take care of them and decide what's best for them, while basically tossing them some scraps while taxing them to death. They keep wanting some political savior to come along with some authoritarian master plan that will save the day. Well, we've been trying that for millennia with consistently horrible results. People have to grow up and stop looking for a leader to save the world. The individual, the family, the community, these are real. These are what matter. Those in power keep doing their song and dance, pretending that if they only had a little more power and passed a few more laws, then everything will be fixed. Why does anyone still believe that? As long as you're looking to some ruler to save the day, you will always be disappointed until the last shred of freedom is stripped from you. No, there's no reason to be proud of being a law-abiding taxpayer. Obedience isn't a virtue. Why do you have a conscience and the ability to judge right from wrong if you're just supposed to ignore all that and do whatever some alleged authority tells you to? Morality matters. Legality does not. Those who are proud to pay taxes and obey politicians' commands are mostly good people, but just horribly misguided. The lies we're taught about authority keep tricking decent people into enriching and empowering liars and crooks. If you want to change the world, you have to start by recognizing the lies yourself. I'd run for office when hell freezes over. Politics will never solve anything, because politics and government are the problem. The left and right scream at each other, but neither is morally consistent, and neither is on the side of freedom or justice. The only discussion you'll ever hear in the mainstream media is bickering over whether Republican politicians should spend your money and run your life, or whether Democrat politicians should spend your money and run your life. How about this radical idea that you should be able to spend your own money and run your own life? When have you ever heard that idea on CNN or the evening news? Oh, I'm not on the left-right scale at all. Most people think that all there is arguing over what kind of centralized authoritarian control should rule the world. then they think that picking what they consider to be the lesser of two evils is the only option they have. But political power, whether it's far left, far right, or anything in between, only leads to wealth and power for the elite, and oppression, poverty, and debt for everyone else. To think that any political party has any intention of changing that is beyond naive. People don't run for political office with the intention of leaving you alone. They do it to acquire power over you and everyone else. And they will always tell the rest of us that we're just stupid, violent animals, and that without them controlling us, we could never survive, which is a ridiculous lie. No, I'm not saying that everyone would be nice if not for government. Obviously, human beings are far from perfect, but giving some of those imperfect people the power to forcibly control everyone else does not improve things. If any idea is silly and utopian, it's the idea that if you give a bunch of politicians dominion over the rest of us, that they will use that power to protect and serve us. When has that ever happened? And why does anyone think it ever will? Some people seem to think that as long as they have their beer and their widescreen TV, everything must be okay. But there's a lot of serious injustice going on in this country and many others that all decent people should be angry about. And righteous anger isn't driven by hatred, but by the love of humanity and justice, and understanding what society could be and will be once people dare to question things and do what's right, instead of just doing and believing whatever those in power tell them to. For humanity to be what it should be, people need to question and reject the authoritarian indoctrination we were all fed. More people need to learn about things like the non-aggression principle, the concept of self-ownership, the idea of voluntarism, and a stateless society. Really, the truth I'm trying to get people to see here is pretty simple and obvious, but we've been deliberately taught not to see it. Now, it may make people uncomfortable to hear this, but really what the world needs is not law-abiding taxpayers, not people mindlessly obeying and paying tribute to a ruling class. What it needs is more outlaws, the good kind, people willing to think for themselves and be willing to stand against the powers that be, to disobey, to resist. If you really care about liberty and justice, maybe it's time you became an outlaw too.
And that was from Josie Outlaw, josieoutlaw.com, josietheoutlaw.com. And that's with the IE, not a Y. Bringing up these articles here. Now, I've seen some interesting news here, and we have NASA claiming that astronauts to live in Mars simulation dome for 8 months. Kind of awkward, we don't even have our shuttle programs, and we're talking about going to Mars here. This will be a simulation dome, but still, what are we accomplishing by going to Mars? I do think our space exploration definitely needs to be expanded, but I'm trying to figure out, what's our end goal on this. I would like to know more, which I might bring that up Friday. I might try to get into our space program and how it's really been kind of missing lately, and we're kind of stuck in this situation where it seems like we're not growing our exploration like we used to. all this taxpayer money, you think at least we could do some more exploration. We have to rely on China and Russia, which seems odd, for our, astronauts to get to the space station. Okay, I have one here. Oh, give me a second while this stupid thing reloads itself for no reason. Okay. We have another one about the UN. This is going to be interesting for any smokers out there. UN approves increased global tobacco tax during secret session. Washington Times, Moscow, the UN's World Health Organization on Tuesday approved a measure. Why does this keep doing this crap? Sorry, they got these stupid ads that pop up over articles. Pop-ups after pop-ups after that. Okay, now I can actually read this. On Tuesday, approved a measure committing countries around the world to sharply raise excise taxes on cigarettes and other tobacco products. A key step to what critics warn will be a push for a global tax on tobacco meeting in Moscow this week. WHO delegates representing 179 countries and about 90% of the world's population. No, they don't represent 90% of the world's population, and they don't represent the countries. I'll tell you that right now. Voted to move ahead on implementing a key part of the 2003 Framework Convention on Tobacco Control. The WHO is the public health arm of the United Nations. And you hear that? Public health arm. You like how they put that? Okay. I'm going to play this here once this commercial plays through.
I'm Alex Sawyer with your Washington Times News Update. The World Health Organization approved a measure to implement a global tobacco tax in 179 countries. The organization kicked off its Framework Convention on Tobacco Control yesterday in Moscow, Russia, and banned the public and press from attending the meetings. The World Health Organization's mission is to reduce tobacco use by increasing tobacco control policies worldwide, specifically pushing for a global tobacco tax. Thus far, 179 countries, more than 90% of the world's population, have signed on to the organization's treaty. A spokesperson for the World Health Organization said they do not have a comment at this time. For all your news, sports, and commentary, you can go to WashingtonTimes.com.
Okay. So now you have the United Nations doing this. It says the gathering got off to a controversial start when delegates voted to bar members of the media, including a credentialed reporter for the Washington Times, from attending key convention and
when a technology company with a vision.
See, I hate these mainstream websites. It's constant bull crap. Okay. Said, preliminary events. U.S. and Canadian representatives are also boycotting the event to protest host Russia's recent incursions in the conflict with neighboring Ukraine. The officials said that the tax was justified because tobacco creates an economic burden on society owing to higher health care costs for tobacco-related disease. More than two-thirds of the parties to the organization's treaty reported an increase in tobacco taxes in 2014. According to the WHO's report, parties that have increased tobacco taxes in general experience a corresponding increase in tobacco prices, and in some of those countries, a tax-driven reduction in tobacco consumption has been documented. Now, I'll tell you that right now. Places that do have high tax rates, definitely even here in the United States, states that have high tax rates, there is actually a black market for cigarettes. When they can go across the border and get cigarettes so much cheaper and smuggle them across in their trunk, yeah, you create a black market. There's times where you can spend that money to transport and it still come out cheaper. And that's all, this is becoming another, war on something. The cigarettes are eventually going to be put in the category of drugs as, crack, heroin, and everything else, which I do look at it as a drug. It is addictive. I've been subject to the addiction of tobacco, and that doesn't mean that this is going to help it. All it's going to do is create a black market and eventually turn regular people into criminals, which it already has. People have been caught selling, cigarettes. And, fine. You're not regulated to sell cigarettes, but I went across the board, got it cheaper, and I'm able to spend all that money and make a profit. You're not regulated. You're not paying them. And the higher tax rate is not really to stop that. It's to pamper the pockets of these people. And that's exactly what's going to come out of this. Don't expect this to actually accomplish anything. It's just not going to happen. Okay, let's move on to some other articles here. Oh, and by the way, while they'll fly a bowl of people around America, no problem. Caribbean island bans visitors from West Africa nations. So just that was something across Drudge Report. Now, what happens when you have politicians that are self-interested, but will kind of pander to the people that are struggling? This one out of truthrevolt.org, maybe. Hillary hypocrisy talks about student debt. Hits UNLV Foundation for $225,000 speaking fee. The UNLV student body protested the large fee, especially at a time when the school's tuition increased by almost 20%. Despite objections from a student body which faces a burden of 17% tuition hikes during the next 4 years, probable Democratic Party presidential nominee Hillary Clinton spoke to the UNLV Foundation Monday night, drawing a speaking fee of $225,000. Ironically, in her speech, she opened that more needs to be done to ensure young people can achieve their dreams and free students from debt. Ms. Clinton delivered her remarks to a crowd of about 900 people gathered in Bellagio Resort Ballroom for the annual UNLV Foundation dinner benefiting the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. Local reporter Venice Toussaint pointed out the Clinton hypocrisy during a Tuesday morning report about the event. Well, Kim and Dana, this is Hillary Clinton's third trip to Las Vegas so far this year, and every time the big question is, will she or won't she run for president? She was asked to last night, and she really did not have an answer, not yet at least, fueling a lot of the speculation about her presidential bid. But to help her make that decision and sway her back toward the White House, she received a clever gift. Some running shoes from Brian Greenspan, the owner of the Las Vegas Sun. Now Hillary Clinton addressed more than a dozen issues in her hour-long speech, from education and energy to foreign policy and Russian President Vladimir Putin, but her appearance at the dinner was also marred with some controversy as she spoke about the rising cost of college tuition and student loan debt. She also accepted a hefty speaking fee of $225,000. Now that's the majority of the $235,000 that the UNLV Foundation collected from donors at the dinner. So she basically, the dinner, all the money they collected, almost all of it went to her, except for $10,000. As Truth Revolt previously reported, the UNLV student body protested a large fee, especially at the time when the school's tuition was increasing by almost 20%. At UNLV, where officials have agreed to raise tuition by 17% over the next 4 years, student government leaders wrote a letter to Clinton last week asking her to return the planned $225,000 fee to the university. If she does not, they say they intend to protest her visit. The students were outraged about this, said Elias Benjuloun, UNLV student body president. When you see reckless spending, it just belittles the sacrifices students are constantly asked to make. I'm not an accountant or economics, so I can't put a price tag on how much we should be paying her, but I think she should come for free. Clinton spokesman Nick Morrell declined to comment on the UNLV students' request. But that's the hypocrisy of politicians. They will tell you to save your money or spend your money or buy things while they're living off of you. This is their only thing that they do is live off of you. They accomplish nothing actually productive in society but to get rich and live a extravagant lifestyle off of the backs of the everyday person. And this will continue to happen as long as the populace keeps voting people into office, keeps allowing people to claim authority over you. This is what will happen. This is what is happening. This is what has been happening. And when is the breaking point for the populace? This has gotten out of control. This is stuff that history would never have. Well, I can't say that history would have imagined it to get this bad. History has imagined. Orwell, Tonkin, these people predicted this because of the same ideology, understanding that you're allowing someone to rule over you. They're ruling over you and they're living off of you. Are you a peasant? Are you a slave? Make your choice. And I'm not asking everybody just to, grab arms and start hitting the street. No. There's ways to do it peacefully. And the most peaceful way is when society rejects the use of force against a nonviolent person, someone that has committed a so-called victimless crime. It's not a crime because there is no victim. So I even kind of throw off the phrase victimless crime. If there is no victim, it is not a crime. So it can't even be a victimless crime. A victimless, unlawful exercise of someone's right, maybe? We are coming up towards the end of the broadcast. I do want to let you know that after this broadcast is over, starting at 8 Central, or 8 Eastern, not Central, 8 Eastern, the continual condition coming up next here on UCY.tv. I picked up a lot of articles off of The Drudge, InfoWars, BenSwan.com, Washington Times, WND, and many others that some of these you could find right at the Drudge Report and get right to them. But we are hitting an interesting time in our lives right now where we have this pandemic starting to seem to break out. Whether it become a full-blown pandemic or not, we see that the people in power are creating a network that will allow them to use this or other pandemic type situations like this to their advantage to control a population. But this could even be farther than that. This could be a chance for them to exercise depopulation, which is a tended goal of people like Bill Gates and others, these eugenicists. And whether it be pandemics like this, vaccines, global warming, they tend to use all these events or so-called events to their advantage. These people think that they're smarter than you, and they manipulate you into believing that they are smarter than you. When really they are just a continual elite group of sick individuals that for generations have had control over the population. And in the end, it's going to be up to you, your neighbors, your community, police and law enforcement agencies, soldiers, other government workers, your family, but most importantly, you. You are the future. We are the future. But as individuals, we have to make those choices. Everybody, as an individual, has to make those choices. Are you going to be a free person? Or are you going to be a government slave? It doesn't mean you have to be violent. doesn't mean you have to start a armed revolution. What it does mean is you have to be the example of freedom. The best way to be the example of freedom is to, 1, live your life as a free person. 2, be respectful. 3, be compassionate. But probably what should be first, I'll just call number 4, is be prepared. Be prepared for the attacks. Be prepared for the blowback. But also be prepared for the awakening. Because it's happening as we speak. More and more people are waking up to the reality of the society that we live in. And as that happens, more people are going to be upset and be seeking freedom. And as people that have already woke up to this system, we need to steer those people